What's up, fam? This is Todd. Welcome to another edition of God Dreamers. Today, we're going to be talking about money, not necessarily how to spend money, but how to be a good stewards and how we can hopefully generate generational wealth. I think a lot of times we spend a lot of time spending money. We want to have fun and enjoy life, but then sometimes we miss the mark when it comes to saving. So I have a special guest today, Cornell McBride. Uh, President of Thrive, right? It's a Thrive Financial,
Yes, sir.
and he's gonna share with us a little bit more about being his life first of all, and how he got to the point where he is today in purpose, but also share a little bit about tips on how we can become better stewards of our finances for the next generation, especially in the African American community. We haven't been good at that. But anyway, Cornell's going to talk about that. So Cornell, thanks, man, for hanging out with us today. I appreciate you spending some time with us on God Dreamers. How you doing
Hey,
today?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic, Todd, and I appreciate the invitation. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to share, and I'm excited that we were able to connect. I'm absolutely excited that we're able to get this information out to our community and others.
Oh yeah, man. I'm looking forward to all the things you have to share today. So share a little bit about what you do now. What are you doing?
Okay. Well, so I'll introduce myself to everybody. My name is Cornell McBride. I am president of my company. It's called Thrive Financial South. I started that company about 7 years at church. I was looking to do a men's event inside of the church that I was going to that would cater to men sharing what they do for business with other men. Because a lot of times in the churches, there's a there's it's political. You know, we don't know if we can promote this person's business because this person over here does the same thing. So what I wanted to do was an event where everybody could come together and they could support each other's business, because now you knew who else in the church did what. Who sold tires, who worked on HVAC, who did refrigerator and appliances, who was in financial services, who was real estate, and all that money could stay in the house, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
So I was headed to Top Golf. I didn't have a name for it. I was headed to Top Golf in Alpharetta, and the Holy Spirit said to me, "Thrive, thrive," and I was like, "Thrive? Oh, that sounds good. Thrive." So I used Thrive, but I put an exclamation mark behind it, so it's Thrive. So it's intentional. And then right after that, man, like the same day after that, I heard the song "Thrive" by Casting Crowns. And I was like, ooh, I like even
So you're
confirmation,
feeling it now, yeah.
confirmation. So right before this event, I had just passed my testing of my life insurance license. And what I realized from the guy that introduced me to the business, um, and from studying, that at 43 years old, I didn't know anything when it comes to how money works. Now, a little bit about my background, Todd. When I came out of high school, I was a professional dancer and choreographer. I danced with TLC, Reebok, Coca Cola, Versace, TNT Sports. So I
What?
was, yeah, man. So I was
You still got
19.
your moves?
I had moved like Jagger. Now I got no moves like anybody. I bust a move right now, man. I better be very, very, very careful. So after that, I ended up being connected to a hair magazine out of Chicago. I did photography for 20 years, and
Wow.
then from the people that I was connected with dancing, I ended up doing photography for Usher and for Ludacris and for LaFace Records and Ti. I was Ludacris' first photographer. I was doing stuff with So Def Jagged Edge. So before everybody had websites, I was doing photo shoots. So we're talking about early mid '90s, Outkast, Goody
Okay.
Mob. I was that guy in Atlanta, and I absolutely loved it. I was published in a lot of national publications. I worked for the King family 6 years, and I tell you, one of my biggest claims to fame is in 1996, I got to go with Dexter King to Tennessee to visit James Earl Ray, because there was this face-to-face event where
Hmm.
Dexter King got to ask
I
on
remember that.
with CNN, and everybody was covered all around the
Mhm.
world, did you kill? my father. And I didn't realize how big of a deal it was. I just knew I was getting paid a lot of money to be
Mhm.
there, and I was excited, but I didn't know until I got there that it was this actual meeting. But that meeting just, the King family doesn't believe that James Earl Ray did it on his own, or that they don't believe that he did it at all. And that moment in history catapulted another part of my photography business as a journalist. So I did all that stuff, man, and then, I meet this young lady in 2011. We go out in 2013. We're married by 2014, and everything in my life changed. I got a life insurance license. The day my wife told me she was pregnant, I quit my job because I wanted to be at home to take care of her. I don't understand how that works. Your wife says, "Hey, I'm pregnant," and you quit your job.
Yeah.
I was a little overzealous. I just wanted to be at home every day. I wanted to be at home with her every day and go through this thing with this pregnancy, right?
Yeah. Well, that's a good. Well, at
And
least you're in a good position to be able to do that. Some people can't do that, right?
yes, and that's when I started realizing that was in 2015, where I started realizing how much my time was worth and what I could earn being a business owner compared to being or an entrepreneur compared to being an employee. And that was really where the shift, where I started reading books like Think and Grow Rich, The Millionaire Next Door, and I started realizing that out of all the people I worked with, all these people that made all this money, not one person ever had a conversation with me about money. None of them. And I realized that a lot of people with money like talking to other people with money,
I believe
and
that.
that's the 1%
Mhm.
talk to the 1% because they feel like there's something that we can exchange. And the middle class and the lower class are going to be stuck there forever if nobody comes into this community and educates us about money because they've taught us how to spend. That's commercials, marketing, billions of dollars. They teach you how to spend through all of those, but you very rarely see a commercial on television that tells you how to save money, how to reduce your interest payments, how to pay a house off early, how not to buy a car at 18%, how not to have a credit card no matter what the limit at 25% is a bad deal. You hear the opposite. First year,
Yeah.
0%, 90
True.
days, same as cash. And I really see a lot of that advertising marketed and targeted toward minorities and people of color.
Yeah.
And it really got me offended because I started looking at things like watching golf shows, and I'm looking at financial investment firms running ads. JP Morgan,
Yeah.
Rolex, Fidelity Investments. But then I watch then I watch an NBA game and it's McDonald's, Wendy's, uh,
Reeboks and sneakers
Reebok,
and
Kia, Hyundai.
yeah, yeah. You so true. That's so true, man. That is
Yeah,
so
and I
true.
was and I was like, yo, there's got to be a way to get more involved in the community. And I needed to get a license to be able to do that. So people would say, hey, he took a test, he studied, he knows the stuff, he's a professional. And that's how I got into the life insurance game. And it's life insurance, it's estate planning. But it's really more so just teaching the everyday person simple biblical principles about finance and stewardship that have been around for thousands of years. We just haven't been Most of us haven't been implementing them because we've been taught to be consumers, especially in this country. We have been taught
Yeah.
to consume. We're one of the only countries that have a buffet. Most countries don't have buffets because they're like, why would you want to eat as much as you can eat? But here in a country where 60% of people are obese, buffets.
Wow, I
And
didn't know
it's
that.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with money. You go to wealthy neighborhoods, you don't see as many McDonald's and Burger Kings and Kroger's. You see Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, Aldi, a different brand catering to a different community. But us, it's unfortunate, but that's why we're here. We're
Yeah.
here so that we can encourage, educate, and empower, starting with our community. Because everybody else, they gonna get theirs, but we got to get ours.
Well, that's so good, man, because you're so right. I mean, We have a disadvantage, I guess, as African Americans, in terms of having the education. We basically have been in the survival mode, from our parents and our great grandparents. It's kind of like the survival mode. It's like, we just need to survive. We need to have enough
Mhm.
money to pay the bills, have enough money to eat, and and so we never got into the mindset of, okay, looking for the long term. And then you
Mhm.
can't teach something that you don't know, right? So I
Absolutely.
mean, so it's kind of passed to the generations now. But you're right, though. I think now is the time, especially with the younger generation. Our younger generation is a little bit more savvy, a little bit more entrepreneurial, have more of an entrepreneurial spirit. Still kind of on the consumer side of things, because that's all you see. You see the sneakers, you see the gaming stuff. All this stuff is all kind of what you call consumption. But
Mhm.
some of them are kind of realizing how to make money off of it. So that's good. But like you said, how do you plan? Um, it's so that in the future you have money for your children and for their children and so on. And that's kind of the area that's been kind of tough, because we've been, like you said before, in consumer modes and survivor mode. So what do you think? What are some of the things you think we can do, to this generation, even us? I mean, even my age, we've got though some of us don't have nothing but Social Security to live off of once, and that's going to go away soon. So
Mhm.
a lot of, this mindset has been kind of, how we transition from this consumer mindset to becoming more of a, financial good financial stewardship.
Yeah, the first thing I would say, you got to increase cash flow.
Mhm.
You have to increase cash flow. You have to be a 1099. Every single person on the planet, from your children up, need to have a 1099. And here's why. There's so many deductions that you can get from owning a business. There's like over 470 deductions that you can participate in as being a business owner, compared to being an employee, where they take out more money than they should in your taxes,
Mhm.
hold that money for a year, which stops you from being able to invest and earn a return on that money, and then they give it back to you and offer all these sales, so that you automatically go into consumer mode.
Yeah.
So the first thing we got to do is we have to understand, you got to pay yourself first. Pay yourself first. One of the worst feelings ever is to go to work, whether it's 10 hours a week or 40 hours a week, get paid on Friday, and on Monday you have no money. You got to learn to pay yourself first. You have to. You're gonna have to. Something's got to wait. Um, because it's depressing. That's one of the reasons why people get so upset about their jobs and are so irritated. You're giving up 40 hours of your time that you can't get back, and most people are giving it up at a job that they don't like, with people who they
Mhm.
don't care for, doing something they don't enjoy. You know, and
Yeah.
and, and people, the Bible says that your gift would make way for you, right? Not a job. It says your gift. So one of the things I encourage people to do is find out something that you get excited about, but also something that you've been called to do. I love speaking in front of groups of people. So I know all I had to do was figure out, what am I going to speak to people about? It ends up being financial services. Um, the other thing is, uh, focus on getting out of debt. Focus on getting out of debt. Uh, the debt crisis we all know in this country, over $32 trillion now, and
Crazy.
you'd have to ask yourself, how can a country with this much freedom, and capitalism is great, ran by the smartest people in the country, how can they be $30 trillion in debt? Self-interest. Bank self-interest, number one. You go through any town in any city, the tallest buildings, you're going to see our banks. you know
Mhm.
and what's crazy is, banks don't make money. Like, banks don't print money. People just put their money in the bank, and then the bank takes the money that people deposit and loan it out 7 to 8 times for every dollar, at a much higher interest rate.
Mhm. That's so
So
true.
what? That's a beautiful business model. It's a brilliant business model. And one of the things that we are trying to teach our community now is for how people can become the bank themselves. How can you capture that interest that, when you're buying a car? How can you capture that interest yourself? How can you pay a house off sooner so you're paying less interest over time? And for a lot of our community, what we have to do is we got to start reading books. They've
Hmm.
always said, if you want to hide something from somebody, put it in a book. Everybody has access to the internet, from your computer to your PC to your watch to your phone.
Yeah.
Everybody has access to it. You know, Start reading some good books like Think and Grow Rich, The Millionaire Next Door. Start educating. There's another one by David Knight. I think it's David McKnight. It's called The Power of Zero, which basically talks to people about how to get to that 0% interest bracket in retirement. There's so much information out there, Todd, that we all have access to, but we have to access that information.
Yeah. So true.
That is the thing. Life insurance has been around since the Romans, but we've only, our parents and grandparents coming out of slavery, they didn't want them to have life insurance. The slave owners had life insurance on the slaves, but the slaves were never taught to have life insurance on themselves. And you go through the 1800s, and we're buying just small amounts of life insurance for burial, when what we should have been doing is saying, hey, eventually we're going to die. How do we take this 10,000 and make it 20,000 and live to our kids? How do we take 20,000, make it to 40,000, 40 to 80,000, and get to the point after 8 or 9 generations where we're passing down tax free millions of dollars,
Hmm.
billions of dollars within the community, instead of teaching them bad habits. We've been buying Nike, Michael Jordans since the 1980s for, $100. Now they're 200 plus.
Yeah, it's crazy now.
That's what we've been teaching our kids, to buy things that lose value and depreciate just as fast as cars. And until we break that cycle, when it's really just a lack of financial education, until we break that cycle, um, we'll see this happening generation after generation. So, reading a book, jump on
Mhm.
MSNBC sometimes, go to YouTube, how to save money, how to pay my house off early, self educate. Self
Yeah.
educate,
Yeah.
self educate. That way, follow your podcast. Do stuff like that so that the information, once you get the information, you can pass it to your kids. Now, whether they implement it or not is irrelevant, but you got to teach. It's like teaching
Yeah.
your children about God and about Jesus. All we can do is teach them. Whether they implement it or not, or they stray, all we can do is teach them about it. So,
Yeah.
I would say everybody, pick up a book or two, or listen to it on Audible, and really just start educating yourself, about how money works.
Yeah. That is so true, man. So many times we waste so much money, and our kids, and we're guilty too as parents. I'm a parent, and so I know I have been guilty of not being as good a steward as I should be. And I'm doing better now, and my kids have seen it. That's actually my daughter. That's one thing I love about her, which she's doing now, because she's got a very fixed budget, but she sets up exactly how she wants to spend money. And
That's
she
good.
has the whole budget out. It has it laid out. This is allocated for this. This is my allocated for going out, and she sticks to it. And I'm like, oh, that is pretty impressive.
That's
And that's
discipline.
smart. Yeah, that's yeah, seriously, because
That's discipline.
a lot of times you just want to go in, this is just one time I go eat out, and like, oh, you eat out again, eat out again. Next thing you know, you spent $200.
Yeah.
So it can quickly accumulate.
And
So
that's where most Americans spend their money. It's eating out. Like when I'm doing a needs analysis with a client, and we like when I'm talking to clients about life insurance, I'm looking for a way not to create another bill, but to reallocate money that they're spending in other places. And the first place I start with is eating out, because it is where people spend the most money. They don't think about it, and it's the most convenient way to spend money.
mhm.
You got the average American family of four people spending $700 to $800 a month minimum. I have a young lady, single, 54 years old, lives in DC, empty nester. She spends $400 a week eating out.
Wow.
Now, I know I'm talking to her. We're talking about $1,600 a month, right?
Yeah.
So we're putting together a retirement plan for her, and it was going to require her to cut that down. And that was not even including what she was saving out of her job. She's making over 120,000 a year. So we consolidated and we reallocated. I said, let's take half of that money from eating out and put it over here. Can you survive eating out by yourself for $200 a week, which is still way too much? She was like, yeah, I can, absolutely, I can. Brother, let me tell you, Todd. She hit me back. She hit me back like 2 weeks ago. Did you submit that policy yet? Are they gonna draft the money? I said, no, not yet, not till I get your approval. Um, she says, good, because I just went and bought a Cadillac SUV. So I'm like, okay. So now she wants to put like $200 a month into a policy for her retirement because she just bought a 2020 Cadillac. She already had a 2019 Acura SUV. So she just upgraded to a brand new Cadillac because she's like, oh, they gave me so much money for my car. So this is the problem right here.
Yeah.
The shiny penny, the shiny, So you went, and now instead of you planning for retirement so she wanted to get rid of her tax bill. She had a tax bill for like 100,000. She had student loan debt. She had the debt for the car. So instead of, and this is the problem we have, this woman is smart. So instead of saying, let's stick to this plan and plan for retirement and get this stuff knocked out, like this IRS bill that you just can't stand, you go out and trade in a perfectly fine car for another car, and then you want to put $200 a month away towards retirement. You're 56. That's backwards.
Yeah. And it's
That's
harder.
backwards.
Yeah, it's harder as you get older. I mean, they always say if you're going to start your retirement, the best time to start is like fresh out of really high school.
Yeah.
Start
The
studying.
womb.
Put your out of the room. Yeah,
The womb.
yeah. You're right about that. But as
Yeah.
far as putting money aside for yourself, I mean, the earlier you do it, the better. I mean, because that compound interest works in
Time.
your favor. But you wait until you're 60 years old. You can still do it, but you got to put more money into it. Right? And you're not going to have that time
Yeah.
to be able to compound that interest because you're 60 years old, 50 years old. You have what another 20 years to work, so to speak,
If you're lucky.
if you're lucky.
So
Yeah.
you can take, we use this analogy all the time. You could take, probably coming out of high school, you could put $100 away every month in between 18 and let's say 60, which is a long time, 40 years. That $100 at an 8 or 9% over, averaging that over time, will get you close to $1 million at 60, 65, which is a much better return than you'd get on a 401k or government qualified plan. Because when you're dealing with government plans, you're looking at, just like the stock market now, you're looking at recession, you're looking at stock market in 2000, 2008, 2015, 2020, 2022. And people
Yeah.
are like, they're like, oh, this is great. Boom, I lost 48%. This is great. Oh, I just lost 30%. And when you lose like that, it takes a lot of time to recoup that loss. And that's why, one of the best plans for people to have is a whole life policy that pays an annual dividend. And I tell people, get your money out of a savings account. Have $1,000 in your savings account, or an emergency fund for maybe 3 months. Have that in a savings account. But typically have store your money into like a life insurance contract where you're going to have guaranteed growth. You're going to get an annual dividend. You can borrow the money for policy loans that you're not paying taxes on. And then you got a life insurance policy that has, a death benefit and living benefits. Those are things for people that are watching this to Google: life insurance with living benefits, whole life policies with an annual dividend. Because that is the way I explain that to people is, if you have a life insurance company that says, hey, I'll give you 3% guaranteed, but the bank where you're putting your money after your direct deposit says we're going to give you 0.01. All right, 0.01 versus 3%. Shoot, 0.01 versus 2%. or 1%, it's still better over here. You have all these other benefits. So you ask yourself, why do people put their money in the bank when you know the interest rate is so low that they're giving you, and the interest rate on borrowing money is so high? Because
Yeah.
everybody else is doing it.
Yeah.
Only because everybody else is doing it. Why does everybody do 401k at their job? Because everybody else is doing it. And that's one of the worst plans on the planet, Todd. For
What?
people. Oh my God. So let me give you let me give you spit some game right here. All right. So 401k. So let's go back before the 401k, there was pensions.
Hmm.
Pensions, people were going to work at a job 20, 30, 40 years. They had good benefits
Hmm.
and they'd have income for life. Well, when in the late 70s, when companies were realizing how expensive it was for these pensions because people were living longer, it was costing companies more money to pay out this income for life. So what they did is they created the 401k. Now the 401k allows the employee to put money in themselves. So now the risk has come off the employer.
Hmm.
Now the employee puts money into the 401k. The employer does a match, and basically the 401k, understand this is a plan created by the government for companies as a tax dodge. Hey, if you do this, it increases your tax liability. Oh, let's do that then. But I ask you, Todd, if the average person that has a 401k, they don't know about stocks. They don't know about mutual funds. They can't read charts. So what do? They just wait to look at a quarterly report.
Hmm.
They don't even know, that more than half of the mutual funds have a negative return. It's a terrible gamble. And then you're tied into the stock market. So what do we know about the stock market? Boom,
Yeah. Yeah.
boom, boom. I watched a documentary on Frontline and PBS the other day, where in 2008, this couple, this guy and his wife, had like 1.5 million. It took 15 years to get to 1.5 million, and overnight it dropped to 412,000.
Dang.
You lost $1 million in a night. You don't have enough time. You don't have enough time to get that money back.
Yeah,
So
just like that.
now,
Wow.
yep. So then remember, you're not paying taxes on that money. So in the 90s, the taxes were lower, right?
Hmm.
Everybody's like, well, great. We'll defer paying the taxes. We'll defer paying the tax. We'll defer paying the taxes. All right. So you defer the taxes, and taxes always go up. So now when a person's got 500 or 600, let's say they got 500,000 in a 401k, and let's say the federal income tax now is 40%. Well, you're gonna pay taxes. You're gonna pay 40% in taxes on that 500,000.
Ooh.
Now here's the thing, Todd. People think when they got 500,000, they're gonna get 500,000.
Yeah.
So what happens when you 65? You're like, woo, I got $500,000. And they're like, no. And you got 300,000. You're like, no, I don't. I got 500,000. It says
Mhm.
500,000. Right, but you got to pay taxes.
Yeah, it's been
You got to
deferred
pay.
taxes.
That's it. So then you're like, wait a minute. So I've been putting money in here for 30 years, 25 years. And then the money's tied up. You can't touch it till you're 59 and a half. What sense does that make, Todd? Put your money with us 10, 20, 25, 30 years. And if you take it before 59 and a half, there's a 50% penalty. What do you mean there's a 50% penalty? Yeah, it's a 50%. You can't take it out. So why would you put your money in a place where you can't use it even when you need it, and then there's a penalty
Really?
that costs you 50% to touch your own money? So now a person's had their money in here, they get 300,000, then they do the numbers and they're like, wait a minute, I put 300,000 in. So now you don't have access to your money. You don't have control of your money. You couldn't use that money invested in other stuff. And at the end of 30 years, you get your money back. That is
Yeah, that's
that,
horrible. You put it that way, it sounds horrible.
it is, but ain't nobody going to, company ain't going to tell you that. But think about it. That's 401k.
Yeah, it is. Wow, I got to go back and reevaluate because I have a 401k plan.
Right?
So
Yeah.
I just lost some more hair.
and that's why I tell people, look, if people that are watching this go on, don't take my word for it. If you want to see some people really sad, type in YouTube And it just, I say this to people to shake them up. Go to YouTube and type in 401k documentary. Go in there and look at student loan documentary, student loan crisis, middle class in America right now. Everything is all right there, and it's telling people, yo, the job thing is not going to get you where you need to go. You can never retire from a job. You simply can't. A job was just over broke. It's never created. A job was created for you to pay your bills. That's it.
Yeah, survive mode.
Survive. That's all it was for. I don't care. Even if I got people that make $300,000-$400,000, they don't have life insurance, so they got 300,000 or 400,000, and they're like, "Oh man, we good, we good." I'm like, "What does that mean? What does that even mean? We good?" Because in people's mind, they think that if I got 400,000 over here, and something happens to me, and your wife gets a check for 400,000, somehow people think that will last them the rest of their life. I'm like, well, if you make $100,000 a year and your family lives off of 80% of that, which is 80 grand, that 400,000 is only good for 5 years. So if you got
True.
you got two kids, which kid goes to college? If you pay the house off, what about the debt? What about the funeral? What about getting the kids through basketball, baseball, soccer, volleyball, valet, family vacations? I said that money is gone. And what happens is people start thinking about it, and they're like, "Oh." And I'm gonna tell you, Todd, man, I've had some difficult. I had to have to come to Jesus meeting with myself first, because then when I realized how the game is rigged, it allowed me to have a different kind of posture when I'm talking to people, because I'm like, let's just do the numbers. Let's just do the numbers. And what happens is when people start looking at where they're at on paper, and that's a big thing, Todd. People need to see where they are financially on paper. What is my net worth? If something happened to my savings, how much do I have? All right, so I heard Todd and Cornell talking about this 401k. Well, I can tell everybody now, Social Security ain't going to be here in 10 to 12 years.
Yeah.
So that money that people thought they were going to have, that 900, my friends at the post office been there 25 years. His Social Security check is $1,400. I'm like, dude, your mortgage is like $2,800. What you going to do with $1,400 at 60 something years old? Go to work?
Yeah.
Think about it. If that's what you give for Social Security, even if you're completely out of debt, that's food for you and your wife. That's food. What about if you have a car note and she got a car note, and y'all got car insurance, and you got groceries, and you got utilities, and you're not working? That's why people have to keep working. That's why I told somebody this the other day, Todd. You can go into a Publix or a Kroger and see a 16-year-old boy, a 40-year-old woman, and a 65-year-old person all working at Kroger or Publix, all making the same amount of money. What's wrong with that picture?